to plan. We're starting on our Sunrise series on national emergencies, emergency response systems as a country, the services that come along with that. So we're feeding all of this into the filth, flood, and fire disaster that happened on June 3, 2015. This series will be asking Ghana whether we have learned a lesson at all from that disaster by assessing our national readiness and response at the national level and at your personal level, at the community level, at the regional level. It's another rainy season. It's here. We're asking, how prepared are you for the rains and the floods? We're told that there's a storm coming from Togo, which will fall heavily sometime during the day. You want to take precaution. It's your better. It's your name, Muna. Better. Helena Piampofo and Noble Crosby. Are you prepared for any kind of disaster at all living in Ghana? Helen.
Am I prepared for any disaster living in Ghana? I don't even know how prepared the state is for a disaster, let alone talk about myself. So,
prayers and vibes.
Yeah. Because since June 3rd, 2015, have we had anything of that same magnitude occurring?
No, not after 2015,
same
no.
magnitude, no.
But earlier we've had that before,
Yes.
1995, thereabout. You know, we had that before.
But we've had fire disasters after.
Yes.
We had flood disasters after.
After.
But the two together are the same
Magnitude, we haven't seen
But what
something
happened in
yet.
1995 thereabout? Is it 95 or 96, 94? I'm not too sure about the year, but I remember that mid-90s it happened. There was no fire connected to it, but the flood was crazy. It was crazy.
Many lives lost.
Yeah, some people died. I mean, even this recent rain that we had, people died.
That's right.
And it raises the key question of what you have said. I remember that the previous administration led by Nana Danko Akufo-Addo with Dr. Bawumia tagging along as vice president, we said that we're going to have an emergency response policy. A team was put together to think around those lines and bring us the policy. I know that the document was presented. As to whether we're using it or whether it answers the question that we have regarding our safety, and preparedness for natural disasters and, our own calamity if we bring it, or tragedy if we bring it upon ourselves. I don't think that we have properly explored that. That's one. Number two, I also think that the citizens have not been carried along in terms of preparedness.
That's right.
What happens if you find the National Fire Service these days trying to do a lot of public education? So when fire, you see a spark on your meter, also look for this and switch it off, don't pour water onto it and do this and do that and do this, do that. But generally, the citizens have not been carried along, in that direction. So a disaster strikes and you don't know. Common CPR to perform when you get to an accident scene and you find somebody lying, unconscious. What do you do? Do we hold the person, as they say in local parlance, olijo, 4 strong boys, one leg to each man, one arm to each man, and then we carry the person and toss them, in the pickup bucket or in a taxi. How do we? I always say that people die not because the accident that happened to them killed them. It's the people who handled them from that point.
That's right.
Maybe to the hospital that killed them. Because if the person has internal bleeding and you position the person in a certain way,
That's right.
If you position the person in a way that blocks the airway,
Indeed.
and he can't breathe or she can't breathe, you are killing the person literally. And all these things come, to add up to our unpreparedness, and you put it rightly. We are not prepared.
In fact, John, you make some very, very fantastic points. We're talking
Sunrise
about
on 3FM.
And I've got to shout out Ghana Met and the fire service in terms of preventative action, early warning signs, and especially to the Ghana Met. If you follow them on the socials, you know that all throughout the day, they update the page, if not hourly, They'll do so throughout the day. Every 2 hours or so, I refresh the page, and now they give you, beg your pardon, the when it's coming, where it's coming from, what areas are going to be hard hit. So I implore everybody to follow Ghana Met on the socials. That's something that you can do today to also prepare yourself. But you talk about...
So you get to know what's happening and when it's going to happen.
Exactly. So you get to know. So shout out to the Ghana Met. Of course, this morning we spoke to Felicity like we do every weekday morning. So you get that intel at least from us. You know that there's a chance of rain for the fisher folk. They know when not to go on the seas. I think that's a good thing. You talk about CPR.
That's right.
I only recently did CPR training myself. Up until recently, if I saw somebody collapse in front of me, I wouldn't know what to do. And like you say, it's in the panic and the post-emergency response.
Nipambro.
Monjimio, Monsorio. That's how I'll be screaming. Helpless, not knowing what to do. At least now I have a few tips and tricks. But that didn't come cheap. I don't know how many employers are putting this to practice. That's something that we have to do. Employers and even the citizenry.
Right.
I don't know how that can also be done.
Back in the day, we had a lot of volunteer groups. I was a Boy Scout growing up, and we used to do a lot of activities with the Girl Guide and Girl Guides, and then also the Red Cross. So these things were taught to us at a very, very young age. These days, you don't have a lot of those groupings. Either in the school, and even the school, not in the public schools, they are in the private schools, the high-end private schools, or the mid-range private schools. If it's a private school and it's more like a low-cost private school, you may not find that there. That's one. The Scouts Association that I belong to, the company I belong to, 16th Accra, was not in a school. It was for the area, the community. Okay, so you had boys who were we came from different places to be part of that company. I recently saw 1-2 around the Accra girls, behind the wall, under the trees. I saw that it's a scout company that's there, all of that. All those things, and the older folks will talk about young Pamir, they will talk about all those things. They seem to have been missing. What that does for us is that if I know, and you were also a Girl Guide and Crosby was Red Cross and he knows, and Abiam was a Boy Scout and he knew, and somebody is a cadet, and all of us, if we all know, then we are safer together. Because at any given time, we can come to the aid of somebody. We know that, this person has fallen down, is just, fainted. So what do we do? He's lying on his back, facing up. His airway is blocked. What do we do? Do we need to turn him over and put him on one side so that he can get to breathe? All these basic things. And I would reiterate that people die because the people around them do not know what to do. I can bet my last 10 CDs that if somebody collapses or buildings collapse, somebody faints now and falls down, the first option would say,
yeah.
Fetch one bucket of water and show him that water is life. who rebaptize him. And it happens.
Yeah.
And then the next point is, Charlie, let's mash kinky for him. There's a template, a starter pack. I'm telling you, it's not a joke.
Or some that normally I see more from Mountain Bra.
Or the kinky, the mash kinky thing. It happens in most communities, I'm telling you.
If somebody faints,
they pour water on the person. The person
they'll use their
to fan you. But if somebody faints like that, what you do is that you're losing the person up. So I'm wearing a lace shoe now. Touch wood, if I faint now and fall down, first option would be to, take off my shoes, take off my socks, losing my belt and any other thing that could be holding my watch, and I take them off. Allow me to feel free.
In fact, give some space.
Exactly.
As opposed to now crowding the person.
So people also don't know that it could also be a trick of bad people to say somebody may fake fainting. Okay, and it's maybe a lonely alley or a dark place, and you being a good Samaritan, what's the first thing you do? You check out and look out to be sure that you're also safe.
Okay.
Because you have to be alive to be able to save somebody.
Indeed.
You get the point. So you check and be sure that this is not some ploy, this is not a trap or for some sort that no other bad people are, before you go on to go and check if the person has pulse, how do you check for it, the pulse? Do you use your magnetic thumb, or do you use these two fingers, the index finger and the second finger, to check? There are many different things that you get the point. People don't know, because the thumb is magnetic, we are told. So many things. So many things. Somebody's gas cylinder is on fire. The first thing is, let's add water. Water is oxygen and hydrogen.
Your car is burning. The first thing you do is to open the bonnet.
The bonnet. You will kill yourself. You have an extinguisher in the boot. You will not reach for it to check the grill and the space there to try and, push the stuff in there, make sure that everything at least cools down before you open. Your car is overheating. First thing you want to do is to open the water tank. You will kill yourself.
The pressure has built up. And Johnny, about this car issue, I've seen, I was in East Legon, somebody's car was on fire, and the people then came to surround the car close to the fire. I'm thinking, have we not learned from tankers exploding, vehicles exploding? Why do we get close? And people start taking their camera to film.
Look, it's been 10 years since the June 3 disaster, right, Crosby?
Yeah.
10 years. On that night when it happened, I already mentioned that I was working at TV Africa at the time, rundown show. We had closed. We came to Circle to come and find something to eat. So I was out the whole night. In fact, the next morning, I only had to rush home, pick a shirt. I didn't take a shower. Pick a shirt over the blue, black trouser I was wearing. Came back on air the next morning because it was happening. The rescue mission had started around like 3-4 a.m. and it was happening. It was going on. Human bodies were just being packed into, and even how we were packing them, so undignified, in the bucket of, the Abosuka Macho, the bigger one. In the bucket of Kia pickups, just taking them away. It was so undignified. Now, the question I asked them was, if we had an evacuation center, as happens in advanced countries, an evacuation center or a park, some sort of a place where people could have gone to seek refuge, I can bet my last pesewa they wouldn't have gone to the filling station. They went to that Goel filling station because, for those who know what that filling station looked like, the one at the Kwame Nkrumah Circle next to the GCB Tower, it had this big canopy that covered the whole place. So as soon as you enter the filling station, you were sure that the rain wouldn't hit you. People sought refuge there because there's no evacuation center. There's no shelter anywhere on that whole stretch. This is Korle Klote Municipal Assembly or constituency, and then Ablekuma Central, which connects to Abosokai.
Right.
From that end, all the way down to name the constituencies that follow. There's no shelter. In your constituency, is there a shelter?
Not that I know of.
There's no shelter.
NADMO will tell you that, they're relying on churches, church buildings. They're relying on school buildings that are not in use, etc.
See,
as a shelter.
those are supposed to be the exceptions. The norm is that, and I will come back to when you plan, what happened to our community centers? Most of our community centers have been converted into whatever. You understand?
Yeah.
We are just not ready. We have not prepared our minds. As we speak, people are building on fault lines.
Yeah.
Earthquake fault lines. People are building on fault lines. Assemblies are giving people permits to build on fault lines. Small earth tremor, and everybody will come and ask, did you feel it? Did you feel it? When you were building on the fault line, did you not know that when the thing shakes, you feel it?
In fact, yesterday, did you guys feel something? I don't know which location you are, but I'm serious. Something was moving.
I was fast asleep.
And we've been told that we've been told to expect to expect something, because we've had a few tremors. Just recall last year, a couple of them at different locations, and we are not strangers to earthquakes in this country at all. And when it comes to earthquakes, I don't even know.
What we have is tremor. The real
stand?
earthquake happened in the 1930s.
Okay,
in the 1930s. So how the Anglican Church, St. Joseph Anglican Church, was relocated from Accra Central, how Accra Academy was relocated from Jamestown to where its current location, how many households had to move. That was what brought about the Kanishi number 1, number 2 estates, number 3, Feoyo estates, and all of those ones.
So ours are tremors.
Yes, they moved from, there was a real earthquake that broke people's homes, collapsed them, and all of that in the 1930s in the Greater Accra region. So the region itself has a history. And I'm sure that if you go to other regions as well, they have their own set of history that they can share. But what lessons have we picked from it? When it happened in 1939, we relocated people and rebuilt the space. You understand? We relocated people to Kaneshi, so then people went to Kaneshi, people went to Bubuashi, people went to North Kaneshi, Swan Lake, people went to Doko, Dakuman, all those places. Because all those places, the history has it that those places literally were, like bushy areas, nobody wanted to live there. Everybody wanted to live closer to civilization, which is the coast. But after the 1939 earthquake, people moved there. And today it's become like a prime area in Accra where people live. You get the point. Present day Ghana, when these things happen, how do we treat them? It's another story. Today you go to Weja, you go to Bawe, you go to Tuba and all those places, and you find people building on the hill. And then it rains, and then you find that the mud will run all the way down onto the street, block one half of a highway, so that drivers are forced to use just one side of the highway. Now this is between a hill, the highway is between a hill and where the dam is. A dam that was constructed in the 70s. And we keep talking about structural integrity of the dam being, at risk, because some people have built down there where the water is supposed to be connecting through the Densu Basin and the, the Weja and all of that. People live there. So you are torn between holding the water in the dam, not spilling it to affect people's homes there, right? And then you're also torn between spilling the water so that you don't compromise the integrity of the dam. Because what it means is that if that dam collapses, that Weja Dam, touchwood, if it collapses, about 70% of Accra will be underwater.
Scary.
About 70% of Accra will be underwater. Those who live at Weja, those who live at Bawe, those who live at Kaswa, Budumburam, those who live at Odoko, those who live at Sakaman, those who live at Dansoman, those who live at Opete, Kweja, Takpo, all those places, those who live at Choko. Look, 70% of the city will be underwater. Kanishi will not be spared. Dakuman will not be spared. Atiko will not be spared. So we have to make up our minds and get serious about this. That dam was constructed by a military government, a Champions government. With all the demonization, they're still serving us.
Yeah.
The democratic dispensation that we've had since 1992, what have they added? And how are they even maintaining what was left for them? Are we waiting for people's homes on the hills to collapse before we start sending them rice, oil, and chaliwati? And rubber bucket? Because that's what we do. Even that will delay.
That's right.
And we know that this is not a place to build. But you find somebody at the assembly who will give permits, say, go and build there. It's a serious matter. Oh. It's a very, very serious matter. We are not ready, I'm telling you.
That's why, Johnny, when you ask, how prepared am I?
No, we are not ready.
Really, as an individual, how prepared can I be if people are being given permits to build in Ramsar sites, waterways, What power really do I have to ensure that this doesn't happen?
An emergency that could be prevented, but somebody's actions
exactly
put you at risk.
At risk. Aha. And that's why it concerns all of us. You might think, oh, this conversation really, well, I haven't really seen a disaster of that nature. Why should I even be concerned? Why are we even talking about preventative measures? Because you will be in your home one day, but because someone else has been given a permit to block a waterway, you suffer the consequences economically, emotionally. Can you imagine? And I always feel so sorry when I watch on television a flood will come in. It's so difficult to recover your ID, your pen drive, your hard drive.
I lived in a place at Abosokai, Governor's Lane. This is not inside Abosokai. This is by the main road where the ADB building is, ADB Bank.
Right.
On the main road. Growing up, that house didn't used to flood. These days it floods.
It floods.
So if you stand, right, if it rains heavily and you stand up, it would go beyond your waist, the water levels.
Wow.
It is because somebody somewhere has built somewhere. You get the point.
And that is through no fault of yours. You have done the right thing, but somebody else.
Somewhere. Because I remember when the main Kaneshi Malam Highway road was being constructed by construction pioneers, CP they called them, who later came to do the median, the wall, the median. They did all of that. Solid work that they did. They put a huge gutter, drain, under the street. There's a huge drain there. So that collects all the water from that Wejagba way, comes all the way down through Odoko, Dakuman, Dansoman Junction, comes through Accra, comes all the way First Light, goes through all the way straight into the Koli Lagoon. So they created that channel. Is that channel silted? How often is it cleared? It's basic things. Basic things that we ought to do. We won't do. In fact, in 2015 or so, when the water came, right? The asphaltic overlay on that highway was as thick as this, if I'm not exaggerating, or maybe much thicker.
Okay.
This was done in the 90s, 1990, 91, thereabout. It was this thick. The water was able to peel some off.
Whoa.
It should tell you, and people's walls were broken, their stuff, the stuff you're talking about, ID cards, passport, damaged. Because it came at night. And you had no option. Where were you going to run to? Where are you going to run and go? Like Stoneboy asked. At that time, where are you going to run and go? Where?
What designated area can you seek shelter?
There is no shelter. We don't have shelters. And if we don't have shelters, what do? We don't have shelters.
I also wanted to add quickly about plugging in digitalization so that we can get alerts going straight onto our mobile devices. During the elections, we were getting text messages from the candidates. Merry Christmas. Thank you for wasting time on me. Go and vote for me. Can we not do that and get some of these weather forecasts, emergency details, whatever, going straight onto directly to our mobile devices so that we know at so and so time, between so and so time, this storm is coming in. Everybody find way. Digitalization, but we're using it for, I don't know,
TikToking. Anyway, well, let's go on to the phone line now. Ama Ofori MP is Executive Secretary, Environmental Service Providers Association. Also joining us on Zoom is Dr. Ishmael Norman. He's the President and CEO of the Institute for Security, Disaster and Emergency Studies, ISTIS. Doc, good morning. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Johnny, long time. Good morning.
Yes, good to see you. We miss you. I remember that the last time we were close to a disaster, the pandemic, you gave us a comprehensive list of what to pack and what to do and what not to do, where to hide and what to do, and etc. We miss you.
Oh, thank you. It's great you remember.
Great. Amma, good morning, and thank you for your time. Hello, Amma, good morning. Hello, Amma, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to your listeners.
Great. Let me begin with you. Can you honestly say that as a country we are ready for disaster, touch wood, if it happens?
Thank you for the opportunity. As a country, what we need to do is to have a plan. So that's why when you go to the municipal and district assemblies, they have planners, they have engineers, and then they have the experts. And it's long overdue that as a nation we start using our experts in this country. That is why they were trained and put in place to assist us grow. So once the municipalities and the metropolitans are growing, to put in systemic plans for disasters. They are inevitable. Whether we like it or not, the way nature is, if we do not take good care of nature, nature has its own way of punishing us. And that is what happens to us whenever disaster happens. So, from a point of view of an expert in waste management, one of the things that would lead to disaster if we do not take good care of our environment is we not distilling or clearing the gutters around this time. Now that we know we are in the rainy season, strategically, we should be looking out for the places that there are big drains and automatically we've been having challenges and quickly attend to them. And this is a time we need to do a lot of education and awareness creation and let people desist from bad waste management practices, where people, instead of sending the waste to the appropriate place, are of the view that when the rains come, they should rather put it in the rains or the rains to carry it along to wherever. I mean, more often than not, we can't even comprehend why Ghanaians, a lot of people will be thinking and assuming things to be done this way. So we need to put in systemic plans and even have a budget in place to ensure that we are ready for any inevitable things that we've not planned for. So ideally, these are some of the things we have to do before the rains come.
I see. Doc, I come to you now and ask the question, are we prepared for disaster if it does happen, touch wood?
Johnny, I would like to be more specific. When it comes to the answer is yes and no. When it comes to health emergency, because of what President Mahama did in his first term, building emergency disease centers like Amasaman,
right.
Legon Medical Center and all of that, and I know that he's going to continue in this path. When it comes to health emergency, we are almost about 60 to 70% prepared. The medical doctors are there, the hospitals are there, and we've gone through the run of it, the simulation through COVID. So we are in a significant way about 60 to 70%. Just last week,
right.
President was in Geneva to sign an agreement, pandemic agreement between WHO and other countries, so that even the playbook is provided by WHO, and Ghana is going to fit it to the Ghanaian situation. When it comes to earthquake, the answer is about 25% preparedness. The first president, panel you were talking to,
right,
said we don't have shelters. It's a very important factor in earthquake preparedness. If you do evacuation, you have to resettle the people. Where are we going to put them in an earthquake, massive earthquake? When it comes to flooding, it is very similar to earthquake, except that eventually the water will recede, and so the evacuation will not take as long as in an earthquake when buildings collapse, bridges collapse, roads are destroyed, and so on and so forth. In terms of fire, we are poorly prepared, not because Ghana Health Fire Service isn't ready to do the job. There are many patriotic citizens working for Ghana Fire Service. The problem is that they don't have the resources. I believe this government is going to tackle it. The highest ladder they have that can go to the highest level with all the high rises in a city is about to the 8th floor. Even so, it is not like 2 or 3 ladders. My understanding, my investigation reveals that it's only one that can do that job, and it's in Accra. What about in Kumasi? What about in other cities and towns in Ghana? So overall, our preparedness is about 40% over 100. Overall, when you take the various disasters, if there is terrorism, the security agencies are there. They are ready to fight to defend this country, no matter what will happen to them individually. However, we don't have any manual in terms of how do we really manage terrorist attack. Is the police going to be the lead? The soldiers are going to be the lead? Who is going to be the lead? How are we going to care for their families? How are we going to care for them in the field? Do we have triage? Do we have a manual for that? Are we going to be able to manage them when they get injured in the field, or do we have to transport them? When it comes to fire, we've been talking about this for so long, and yet so little is being done. We've watched other countries and other communities in America, California. They have fire airplanes where they are able to douse a fire from the sky. Do we have anything like that in Ghana? We talk big. We talk about climate change. We don't know what it means. We have no idea about the carbon footprint of any Ghanaian. There is no per capita assessment of the carbon footprint of any Ghanaian. We are burning rubbish, we are burning rubber, we are drinking nanoplastics in our water supply chain, whether it is sachet water or bottled water. Are we doing any kind of toxicological study to find out how many of us are exposed to nanoplastic? And what is nanoplastic? What about galamsey mining? How much exposure have Ghanaians, the communities in those places, been exposed in terms of the toxic material like the mercury, lead, and all of those chemicals they use for the extraction of gold? So are we really prepared? And that is why I rank the country at that level. Right. I will not blame it on anybody. Let us not look at only NADMO. Let us not look at only Ghana Health Service. This is a holistic, multi-sectorial preparedness that has to take place, which hasn't taken place since independence. And I don't know which government is going to do it.
Doc, I thank you for that insightful response and the breakdown. I come to you now, Madam, and ask you, people are building in waterways. People are building in spaces that are supposed to be Ramsar sites, are supposed to be receptacles for collecting rainwater, etc. We talk about it, we look on, they build, we gather money, take equipment there, go and break them down. We watch, they rebuild. How do we end this charade? Hello, Amma.
Hello.
Did you hear my question?
Please, can you ask the question again?
Okay. I'm saying people are building in waterways. People are building in spaces that are considered Ramsar sites, wetlands, etc. We talk about it. They build, we go and break them. We sit down, we watch, they rebuild, we go and break them. When will this charade end?
We have to enforce our laws. The laws in Ghana needs to work for the first time. And we as Ghanaians also need to be very disciplined and also learn to do the right things. So if the laws of this country can work, and if the assemblies can enforce the bylaws, can enforce their own laws. And I think it will go a long way to help us. Because they are the people also who issue the permits to the people to do these things. And when you are building, the law says it has to be, once the process is going on, engineers come on inspections to even inspect what you are doing. So indeed, if the town and country planners are on top of their job, the engineers, the experts in the assembly are doing their work, all these things should not be happening. So if we as a country would now want to ensure that we have the beautiful Ghana that we want, and even if we understand the importance of the Ramsar, it's a way of protecting the environment. It's a way of ensuring that the environment is protected, and it's a cycle that preserves our land. And at every point in time, we need them. That is why naturally it's even there to ensure that our environment is safe for us to use. So these are the things that we need to understand. So if the place is a Ramsar, we should allow it to be as such. And because we did not allow it to operate naturally, we brought in the impact. So these are the things that we need people to understand. So we need our law enforcers to enforce the laws to the letter so that we can have things done properly in this country.
Great. I'm Alfred. Thank you very much indeed for your time. We're grateful. She's the Executive Secretary, Environmental Service Providers Association. Thank you for spending your morning with us.
Thank you.
Great. Let's go onto the phone line now, and we still have Dr. Ishmael Norman with us, but Engineer Maham Abdullah is joining us as a road and building consultant. Engineer, thank you very much indeed for your time. I put the same question I put to Amma to you. We acquire the land, but do we take our time to plan before we start building to live in it, or we just acquire the land, build, live in it before we start thinking of planning? What do we do in this country? What do you know that we do in this country? Tell me.
Hughes, Salaam alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Good morning to everybody.
Yes, sir.
And your viewers and listeners alike.
Yes, sir.
I'll just speak from where my sister just ended. I heard of saying that if the assemblies decide to work well, would have, at least we can be able to reasonably reduce the devastation that we have across the country. There's a different trend happening. The assemblies are overwhelmed with the kind of confrontations that some of them meet when they go to some of these sites to sanitize the area. There are people wielding machetes and guns. It's scattered across. In fact, I got an interview just last 2 weeks at your station.
Right.
Last week, I said, go and have a look at the biggest basin we have around the Abokobi enclave. That's just about 1.2 kilometers away from the Abokobi police station.
Right.
In fact, that is the separator between the Madina, Lankwantana, and then Abokobi. That there's the river. In fact, that river is the biggest basin that could have contained maybe, let's say, 40%, 30% of the outdoor water. But as at last 2 weeks, and last month, over the past 1 year, the whole place is being filled. And no authority can go there because of the kind of people who are standing there protecting illegality to happen to Ghanaians. As I speak, in fact, I did TV3 last 2 weeks that they should move their cameras there as we speak. I know you can do this better. And if you take your cameras to go and look at the biggest basin that God in His own wisdom has created to be able to be the receptor, the biggest receptor of your water. That's supposed to go through that place, get to Ashoman, go to Haju, get to Atomic proper, and then get to Domi, and then Christian Village, and then end up through Abofu and to Caprice and to the Odo. So that is one of them that is overwhelming, that the task force at the assembly, who do not have any law to back them by using guns, are confronted with. And this is a stark reality that everybody who is listening to you are aware. Now, there's another thing that you have to take into consideration. If you go and do a proper recce about the houses that are sitting in waterways, the wetlands, I can beat my chest and tell you that approximately over 90% of those houses are not with permits. If you want, do that check and see. Because I'm telling you.
Right.
Over 90. What happened on the Ramsey side when the minister visited the place? In fact, one of the women is on tape.
Right.
On video to have said that I've given bribe to almost 45,000 Ghana cedis.
That's right.
Madam, if you have actually gone through the mill, you know that you won't get a permit to put up a building at the Ramsey side, which is one of the reserved areas that gives the country a lot of health benefits. So how come almost all the houses on the Ramsey side do not have permits? So if you are trying to teach the assembly engineers and the physical planning officers and the rest, we should dig down and find out what actually they are challenging. Not only about the resources. They have a pickup to go around and do it, but when they get to those places, the confrontation is there. So it means that we may have to, like also TV3 with Oko, the Honorable Kubandapo last week, that maybe we have to attack some police and the military persons to the assembly whenever they are going for their rounds, normal routine rounds. Because the zoning under the Land Use and Special Planning Act of 2016 at 925 is the first thing that assembly is supposed to do. That will zone and say, TV3 enclave is not for a residential facility, but rather a mini industrial hub, or it's for farming communities or whatever it is. Then suddenly, you will see 3, 4, 5 buildings springing in that area, which is not supposed to be there. If you go to the assembly to ask what is happening at the assembly, they will tell you. You don't have the permit at the said location. And when they go there, the confrontation is like you are risking your life. Then you find out, Hughes, you will find out that some of them that I know, some of the buildings that we have seen, you get to know that there are unseen hands who sit on TV and sit on radio and are supposed to be the role models for everyone to follow, go behind and then tie the hands of the engineers at their back. Because the assembly the MMDC sometimes also, condone what happens because of the unseen hands that are put so powerful than them. And this is scattered across.
Let me go to Dr. Norman. Dr. Norman, so clearly engineer is telling us that there's a monkey hand in the dark. It's shaking your hands, or shaking hands with you. You're not too sure if it's that of an animal or a human being because it has an opposable thumb. Now, how do we carry the citizens along? You have given us a breakdown of fire, health, emergency, and all of that. But the citizens, how do we carry them along beyond the institutional action that we expect?
I think both of the panels that have just spoken before me have said significant things that should be taken into consideration. One of them is that, Johnny, we don't take risk communication too seriously. You hear about monkeypox when there is a new case. You don't see consistent risk communication by a Ghana Health Service or Ministry of Health about this kind of emergency. You don't hear any town or district assembly, municipal assembly talking about the damage in building and waterways. You don't hear anything. And so we don't take risk communication seriously, and we don't educate the public about what we expose ourselves to. The public itself is very recalcitrant. Ghanaians are very difficult when it comes to choosing between good and bad. We tend to have the propensity to choose what is bad. Nobody needs to tell you that building in waterways is not good for the community. But because we think we are connected to some political figures, the unseen hands that engineer referred to, we just go ahead and do it because we have the power.
Right.
I believe that the breaking down some of these structures is very sad, but you know, if you had done the right thing, you would not be in that kind of demand. So I believe that the government needs to be stronger. The district assemblies need to stop the corruption, and the municipal assemblies have to become more virtuous in how they basically apply their own bylaws and the national laws on these kinds of activities. And that's all that I would say. We cannot whip them like Amankwa used to do at Circle.
Right.
But if you disobey the law, the law will expose you. Your building will be collapsed, and you will have no one to come to your mercy.
Doc, let's talk about shelters. And I insist that June 3 disaster that happened at Kwame Nkrumah Circle perhaps would not have claimed that many lives if the people had somewhere to go and pitch, which was engineered either by the assembly, by the community, or by the state. These shelters, and we find a lot of homeless children around, and sometimes you inquire where the child who has been taken to social welfare is being kept. Is either staff has taken the child home to go and live with him or her, or they leave the child at the police station. It's clearly a big concern and a big worry. Are you equally worried as I am?
Johnny, I am very worried, and I know that you covered the June 3rd, 2015 flooding at Circle or Dubai Bridge very extensively. I know that you are probably one of the people with the repository of knowledge on that event in Ghana today. Ghana has taken disaster management for granted. There is not a single shelter in a single community in Ghana where people can go to if there is fire, earthquake, flooding, terrorist attack, nothing. And if you compare that to some European countries, every community in some European countries have underground shelters that they can go to. And because of modern transport development of subways and the rest, they have even extended their shelters where they are over-sheltered in terms of protection of the citizens. Ghana shelter is a joke. And one of the costs of building a shelter, the cost of building shelters are very expensive, but it can be integrated into underground transport system. So maybe President Mahama may have to take this on as part of the resetting agenda when it comes to human security and human flourishing, to begin to find ways to find money to develop underground railway system, at the same time developing underground shelter system, so that in an emergency, the people of Ghana will be protected. Because right now, even the best hotels in Ghana have no shelters. They use churches as shelters. The 5-star hotels in Ghana, in Accra, in Kumasi, they use churches. You think that if there's a terrorist attack, those churches will not be one of the places that they will attack? It is sad that we don't think far, because maybe we can't see far.
This is a very serious matter you have raised here, and it takes me back to engineer. Engineer, I'll ask you, since we started experiencing this in Ghana, and I was just making reference to 1939 earthquake in Accra, did we learn any lessons from that? 1995, we saw the rains. Recently, we've seen the rains as well. Have we learned any lessons at all, from where you sit?
Well, what I've noticed is that if you see those huge edifices springing up around the airports, the cantonment, and the likes, they mostly go with the nitty-gritties of getting every I dotted and every T crossed.
Right.
They will do their soil tests. They don't just end there. They will do what we call the seismicity. They will do an intensive seismic test to know that do they have any fault line within where they are going to do their massive constructions. I know of a hotel in Accra that I already mentioned it because of business, but they did everything right. When they realized that when they did the detailed test and they did the seismicity test, and they realized that the fault line was actually going through the center of their facility. They designed the building to have expansion joint at that location, and they shifted their swimming pool from that side. Because you can see that some people have swimming pools, and then every now and then they have to supposed to go and do that tack repairs. It's not because maybe the masonry work was not done properly, but it's because of the minimum earth tremors that actually takes place without you even noticing them. So those huge buildings, especially the foreign ones, or let me say those who are donor funded, they make sure that they do the right thing. But regrettably, if you talk about our individual buildings here and there, sometimes including some of our schools and other facilities in the country, we don't have those things done. Regrettably, you see that some buildings are done, even the drawings are done in Accra,
right.
Let's say for a government school or whatever.
Right.
And the same drawing is taken to maybe Eastern region, Central region, Northern region to go and do the same construction. Would that recourse to the nitty-gritty of the soil? So it looks like we've not actually gotten there in whatever happened to us. We have not learned a lot about it. Let me just chip in this thing. You know, when the atomic blasting had occurred,
right,
the explosion,
right,
there was about 22 communiques from government. Those who are driving through Domi towards Christian Village, those who are driving through Bojuasi towards Kaswa, see where we are siting our filling stations. And I cringe when I see just across the street on two sides of the location, filling stations are springing up. What did the communique say? And what did the laws of the MPA say? That within 300 square meter radius, you can have two filling stations.
That's right.
But we are now having filling stations just across the road. And you go and see the stop work sign. But you see, before you can even get a permit to put up a filling station, you write to the assembly first and foremost for the zoning status. When you say you have no objection, then you now hide behind one of the companies of the fuel stations to now write to the MPA to come and inspect the place. What happened to the communique? Why are we still having filling stations springing up just across the street? Because you know that if one filling station is sitting at one place and there's even an unlikely of an explosion, because there's no other filling station closer to it, maybe the devastation will be minimal. But why are we lumping filling stations across when we know that the law states that we shouldn't have filling stations as close from the 300 meter radius? As I speak with you, on the Bojuasi to Kaswa Road, I used the place last week to go and visit my old lady. And just opposite each other, they are under construction. So what happened to the assembly? What happened to the NPA? What happened to the EPA?
I think you have gone too far, engineer. Go to North Kaneshi Dance Bar.
Okay.
You know North Kaneshi Dance Bar after the Azuma Nelson Sports Complex, towards where the AMA Sub-Metro office is.
That's right.
There are two filling stations facing each other on that main road.
The only time you can
don't go to
Kaswa
Bojuasi. Just here.
The only time you can have those filling stations, even in the let's say the difficult situation, is when there's a great separator between the road. Like, okay, when the car cannot turn to the other side to go and buy a fuel, then it means that you can have those ones. But not when we have a control flow road where the driver can turn either left or right to go and buy a fuel.
This one is an intersection crowd close to it. Yeah.
So the question, Johnny,
yes,
now
sir.
the question is, let's ignore the person who's doing the construction. 1 second. Let's just say for 1 second we have ignored.
Right.
Look at the process involved. You write to the assembly for a no objection status. They will come to the land and check whether it conforms with their zoning status that, okay, this area has been zoned for industrial construction or whatever. It's not domestic. Then they can tell them no objection. Then you write a letter, would attach the MPA, the assembly's letter to the NPA. Then they will come and inspect. Then they also respond. The EPA will come and inspect. NADMO and FISA will come and inspect. So if you see anybody like you're telling me, the ones at the Kanisi there, then we should ask the various assembly, the various institutions, how come all of you flouted the laws? If the president, I know what he's doing, if the president wants to be counted, which of course we have seen signs and signals that is going that way, we have to sustain this campaign. Every assembly, they can even say we are going to do it in segments. Maybe within the next 2 months, government is just saying, okay, from Ayimensa to Medina, that's what government is tackling. Maybe the next 2 months is tackling from maybe 37 towards Kanishi. The next one is maybe from Amasaman towards Achimota. And let's see that any question mark building in our areas that we are talking about, let's go and probe. Did the engineers at the assembly give the permit? Mind you, before a permit is given at assembly, there's a committee which is chaired by the MMDCs. There's a physical planning officer, there's an engineer, there are 2 members co-opted by the assembly engineer, 2 members. Then we have the NADMO, we have the fire service, we have the EPA. How on earth are all these members sitting in a meeting and approving of structures to be cited in areas which are not supposed to be done? Johnny, If you want to pick it, let's educate our agenda. In fact, tomorrow, if you want, I'll start to share some pictures with you about. Let's take today. We are doing about zoning status.
Right.
Tomorrow, we're talking about how do we get permit for EPA for a filling station.
Right.
How do we get permit for? Then we'll notice that the flouting of the laws is sequential.
That's right.
It follows from the source. The Assembly, the NPA, the EPA, the NADMO, who are clamoring for government to give them more money.
I see.
To be able to salvage people and to rescue people from the devastations. They are also members of those who issue permits.
That's right.
The Land Use Special Plan at 2016, they are members of the committee. So what happens?
Okay.
So let anybody have a whistle blowing where that if something is happening at assembly and you don't agree to it, when you object it by writing, you can give it to Johnny to make noise about it so that we can save the country. Can't we do that?
We can, certainly. Doc, I come to you. You usually hear, and you've bemoaned the fact that we don't communicate properly in terms of disaster management, etc. One of the things that you hear officialdom say when it starts to rain or it's about to rain, they say, oh, if you live in a low-lying area, you move to higher grounds. They don't provide the higher ground for you, but they ask you to go and move in to a higher ground where you don't know. So the people literally have been left to their fate. Is that a way to go, Doc?
Actually, no. But before I address that question,
right,
Johnny, I think when we're talking about subterranean, terranean structures like shelters, I think you may have to have a completely set conversation on that because the shelters are very, very important.
Right.
But it looks like we veer towards the surface structures. So let me now address the question.
Right.
The question is the risk communication, particularly before heavy rainfall, is not the correct way to do it. First of all, we have not mapped the city, for example, Accra, to tell people what are the higher level areas of Accra and where are the low-lying areas. So if, for example, I don't know the difference between the landscape, the low-lying levels and the rest, how the hell do I get to the high level? And when do I get there? And when I get there, what am I going to live on or live in? What am I going to eat? Which toilet am I going to use? Should I go and just poo-poo everywhere I go on a high level? I mean, the whole thing is so infantile that conversation, whoever comes out to say that, probably in the old days should have been given 6 lashes by the headmaster. Because it doesn't make sense. Which part of the city, the police has identified the hotspots for crime. Now, when it comes to emergency preparedness, which part of the city can we run to if there is flooding coming or anything like that? You need to map the area. And this one, I put it in front of NADMO. They should have mapped the city, every community, identify the high levels and the low levels so that the community can be evacuated. The vulnerable populations in those communities can be evacuated. That means they have to make transport available. Disaster management is not talk. It is technicians' area of specialization. And we don't have people that are specialized. That is why we set up our university to train people in disaster management and in criminology. But do you think the government is supporting us to train people, to train more people? No, they don't support us. And so we are struggling. And sometimes I feel reluctant to talk because at my age, one day I will pass and I have not deposited the load of knowledge into young people. We haven't educated enough people. We have medical doctors, engineers, and the rest. And some of the engineers, they go towards disaster management, but they go to the structural side. They don't go to the technical side for real disaster management. They don't go to the humanitarian side. You want me to go to higher level? Okay, I will go. By what means? Can I walk up? There are old people in our community. There are young people in our community. There are pregnant, vulnerable people in our community. It doesn't make sense when they talk like that. And that is why I call anybody who says something like that, let's give them the metaphorical 6 lashes. Don't talk like that if you can't substantiate that. with real action.
Doc, I thank you very much indeed for spending your morning with us. We're grateful that you could join us. And that's Dr. Ishmael Norman, is the president, founder, and CEO of
You're
ISTIS.
welcome, Johnny.
Thank you very much, Prof. Engineer, I come to you for your closing thoughts. Where do we go from here? We know the problems. It doesn't look like we are ready to get the solutions on, but the rains will not wait for us. They're coming regardless. What do we have to do now going forward?
Well, I have to just say one thing. Just listen to Doctor talking about lack of shelters allocated in the capital. All the capital is already concentrated. It's actually lumped up. If government want to prioritize the safety of the citizen when there's any oncoming disaster or anticipated disaster, we may have to look at some lands which are actually being cohabited already. Government has to go in and negotiate with the people who may be on that particular stretch of land and compensate them and try to relocate or remodel Accra, so where we can have these isolated sets so that in case of emergency, that will happen at second, people can just move there. Otherwise, government cannot just go and use the veto. But if you want to get this thing done, Accra is choked, but we need to do it in Accra and other areas. So we have to start to identify, or government can task some of the engineers or planners to identify some of these areas and go into negotiations with the persons who might be situated in those areas, residents of those areas, and then make do with some monies for relocation or reconstruction so that we can actually put these structures within these areas. In fact, I watched there was a cycle competition in Austria. I was not interested in the cycle, but I was just looking at the drone pictures that were being taken. And I learned that almost like every 20, let me say 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, there are dedicated flower gardens, like let's say the Sutherland Park.
Right.
Across the country. We don't have them again. So these are the things that we have to start doing. And Johnny, you are a very loud mouth. Loud mouth in positive terms. You go very far. And some of you will listen to you every morning before at least we move to work. We can champion through some of you, and then we start to drum down why we need these things in Accra and other regional capitals and other district capitals. And so that government can start. Because we have to start with the piecemeal, and we can get there. And then people who are putting out strategies, like you said, they should know that when you go to the process, you will get your things right. Jenny, I'm putting up a building at Dobru. I'm putting one at Amasaman.
Right.
I've gone to the process as an engineer with assembly. So what is so difficult for you to do? And the money you pay was not even 5,000 Ghana cedi at the assembly. Why are we just doing that to ourselves? So that's why I want to leave with the question to the Ghanaians to ponder about it, so that we can start making good use of the technical guys, engineers who are in the country, planners who are in the country, to be able to get us a solution. And let the notion be that we don't have engineers who will charge you extra. But if you look at the extent of damage, sudden damage that will happen to you, then you understand that when you are choosing the right person, get somebody who can tell you in the face that this place that you're going to buy this land from day one. Don't even just go and buy a land before you call an engineer, unless it's a family heritage. But if you're going to buy a land, it's better you go with the fiscal planning officers or the surveyors to be able to help you to choose where you think there will be any problem in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alhaj Engineer Mahama Abdullah. We're grateful that you could join us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alhamdulillah. Helen, the professionals have spoken.
That's right.
And they have told us what the problems are, told us what the solutions are. The question is, are we ready and willing to listen and implement?
That's the bottom line. Are we ready to listen and implement? Ama Oforientry, who joined us, Executive Secretary, ES, I've forgotten the full name, but she's all about the environment.
Environmental Service Provider Association.
She says nature will punish you if you don't do the right thing. And so as the rainy season is here, we watch on, and I don't want to be pessimistic, but I know these conversations will still prevail long after this rainy season has happened. Listening to Dr. Ishmael Norman, he was talking about the demolition of homes and houses for people who are just too stubborn. He says, sometimes it's sad, and sometimes I watch and it's so sad, watching the buildings come down. But if you do the right thing in the first place, you save yourself all of this wahala. I don't want to see a flood in my home because you refuse to do the right thing. You're paying bribes and so on and so forth. That simply cannot be the way that we operate. It should concern all of us. We should be alarmed and worried about the future, because we've talked about a number of things, about shelters, about preparedness, about even how quickly emergency services respond to us. What is our turnaround time if you call the ambulance, if you call the police? In fact, that survey that says 70% of Ghanaians would rather call a relative before they decide to call the police or an emergency an emergency service provider, whatever you term it. And I think that should all signal to us that we're just not on the beat. Let's do better as well. For employers who are listening to us, can you get some CPR training for your staff? Get some, the fire service to come in and do some training there as well. They give practical tips and tricks about what we need to know. I'm sure NADMO can also get in pole position to be giving us some of this education. What happens if there's an earthquake? Do you know where to go? Are you going under a bed, under a table? Are you supposed to go outside, be inside? There are so many other things that we don't know. And I think as a citizen as well, you must take it upon yourself to know some of these things. You're of age. You're an adult now. If you are not getting it from your employer or whatever the case may be, maybe you weren't lucky enough to be a Boy Scout, Girl Scout, Red Cross, take it upon yourself to also learn these things. CPR, training, learn how to put out fire. Do you know how to use a fire extinguisher? I mean, come on, let's learn some of these things for ourselves. Fire starts, you are just running helter-skelter. There's an extinguisher, you are just pouring pure water on it. I've seen it before. There was an extinguisher there, and because they simply don't know how to use it.
Because some don't also believe in the extinguisher.
I see.
Powder.
So
powder.
we have to equip ourselves. If you're not following Ghana Med, for example, follow them. Give yourself that much needed armor. We can't control everything, but the things that we can control, let's take a keen interest. Even where you are, look around. Is your community center functioning? What are the available places that you could potentially seek shelter if the need arises? Is there a church nearby, a school nearby? What can you even do in your own community to help yourselves? Can you get together? Is there an association? Some of you decided that you live alone, you go home and you come home. You don't know anybody in the area. You don't know your assemblyman. You don't know, let's get involved.
You are just living in the area.
Living in the area. Nobody knows you. Sometimes, bachelor, wait to go, baby.
No, but you can't say nobody knows that. The bean seller, watches seller, usually they know them.
Maybe the Indomie seller who comes at 10 p.m.
Yeah, that's
one.
you there. You put it down.
Yeah, where's that? It's a TikTok guy. We all down.
But they don't know the specific house that you live in.
Start to get to know. Something happens. We know that, okay, there's one guy down there. Maybe he hasn't been rescued. Let's go down and find him. Let's start being more conscious. Wake up. Wake up.
When you are too friendly with people they start begging for things. That's also one. The way the economy is.
The city is appreciating. Get to know your neighbors.
The city is gymming.
It's gymming. Muzzle.
Oh boy.